Hi, I'm Janet Neal of The Superbwoman. I'm so happy that you're here with us tonight. We've got a really great show. And before we get to that, let me just take a couple minutes and tell you a little bit about The Superbwoman, about myself, and how this whole Superbwoman Sundays at 7 came to be. I spent many, many years as a superwoman. I really tried to be a superwoman, and I succeeded. I had many, many balls in the air. I felt that that was the right thing to do. I felt that I needed to do everything by myself, to do it perfectly. And I learned my lesson that that just really is not sustainable. And so I had to take the time to step back to figure out who I really was. What is it that I wanted out of life? What were my values? What were my strengths? What were the skills I enjoyed using? And I took that time. I really learned to be myself. And I found that when I took that time to be, that was when I really stepped into my power. I also, shortly after that experience, I was thinking about the state of the world and how we really need help. And I had this knowing that women can change this world in a very short order when they realize that they have the power to do so. And I realized that I have the ability to help women understand that. And so therefore, the Superbwoman was born. It's all about moving from being a superwoman, where the emphasis is on doing, to being a superb woman, where the emphasis is all about being and then doing. I certainly am still busy, 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 but I'm doing the things that bring me joy, that can put positive energy back into the world for the betterment of all. And that's my mission, is to help women to do the same thing. So the Superbwoman Sundays at 7 is really my way of showcasing some of these amazing superb women that I have met on my path of late. I have met women who do all different kinds of things. And the thing that they all have in common is that they have taken the time to step back, to understand who they are, what their skills, their special strengths and gifts are, and they're putting that positive energy back into the world for the betterment of all. So I'm very happy that you're here with us today. If you have any questions, be sure to type them in and I will ask them as we go along. And I want to welcome my guest today, who I met not that long ago, but I was so blown away by her story that I knew she needed to be on this show. Selina Maitreya, I think I'm saying that right. Correct me if I'm saying it wrong. Selina was and still is, a consultant to professional photographers for the last 30 years. She's written 2 best-selling books, and she has also, all this time, been a student in spirituality. And then, as you'll hear, she had a life-changing incident, which has really changed her path in life. So I'm so thrilled that Selina is here to talk to us about that and where she's going in life. Selina, welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here with you, Janet. Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Selina, you and I were talking, and you were telling me this story about how you went from being a mom of 2 boys, that you had this really nice practice going where you were helping professional photographers, and then you were looking to make some changes in your life. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've been very, very fortunate. I've been a consultant to photographers for 30 years. I was the first consultant in the country. It just kind of, the business changed, I evolved, I fell into it. And I was supporting my sons. They have a great dad, but I was the primary caregiver and financial support. And we had a wonderful life. We lived outside of Massachusetts, where I'm actually sitting right now. And after raising them for many years, during the time, I was a spiritual student. I've been a spiritual student since I was 16, and I'm 59. So the math is a little bit daunting, but it's been a long time. My name, Selina Maitreya, was given to me by my first spiritual teacher when I was 16 years old. So it's been a very, very long curve. I decided it was time to sell my house. It was last July, almost a year. In 2 weeks, it would be a year from then. My house sold in a day. It took months to get it ready. After 20 years, you can imagine, Janet, it was a big job. And I literally had put my belongings on a pod and sent them off to New York on a Friday. The next day, I was going to go over to my house and clean it for the last time. And Monday, I was going to close and then go get into my car, drive for a couple of weeks to see friends, and then move to New York. I was waiting for an apartment. I had been asking Spirit for years before the sale of my house to help me to see a way to move from this very successful and extremely satisfying career as a consultant to being a spiritual teacher. I very much felt the calling years ago and didn't feel the timing was right. And as years went on, I just wanted more and more to be a teacher. But I couldn't see the financial path. I couldn't see the practicality of it because my business kept me so busy. I was very happily, talk about going from doing to being. I was very happily and very deeply connected to Spirit, having 12-hour days, 6 or 7 days a week. So I was doing what you were saying, which is a lot of doing, but I was deeply rooted. So I knew my path. I knew my direction. But I couldn't see the direction to being a teacher. I knew my connection to Spirit. My business was just time-wise, took so much time. And so here I was, wanting this, really asking for years, praying to find a path, and just being told to sell my house and knowing it was the time and going through the steps down to that moment where I put everything on the pod. And then the next morning when I got up on Saturday to go over to clean my house, because I had to stay at a hotel because there was no bed to even sleep in. I was driving to my house, and I drove across the road that I'd driven over thousands of times in 20 years. And as I crossed into the intersection, a woman blew through a red light. I had an Audi convertible. And I mentioned the type of car because I had just put my top up, and it was a beautiful car, a very small car. A woman plowed through the red light and hit me in my driver door at 70 miles. And my experience was that I'm driving along totally relaxed. This was literally the first day of the next part of my life where I was going off into not being a mom anymore and moving to New York. And I didn't know how much of the next part of my life, but my experience as I went into the intersection was that the car filled with this amazing light. And I had the last conscious thought I had was, this is what happens when people die. I'm dying. I didn't see her. I didn't know what happened. I just knew that you can't experience the type of light I experienced without being on the way out. And that's what happened. And my entire life changed from that moment on.
Wow. I can't even imagine that situation. So you were telling me more about that, about hearing the voice to tell you to turn the wheel.
Yes. While I was in the car, the light came, and my last conscious thought was that I was dying. And then the next thing that happened was nothing. And I say this in retrospect because there was nothing. So while there was nothing, I didn't know there was nothing, but I was brought back into my body probably within minutes, and I heard a voice very quietly say, steer to the right. So I very calmly, I saw a pole in front of me, I steered to the right, and in a very short period of time, my car came to a stop, and I was brought back even more into consciousness, and people were running over, and I was covered in glass, and I realized, I must have been in an accident. And the long and the short of it is that I was taken to the hospital. I had not a broken bone. I had not a scratch. They were literally had cut my shirt off and were using tape to take the glass out of my skin, but there wasn't one piece of broken skin or one broken bone. And everyone at the hospital thought this was a miracle because my car was totaled. And I was sent home within 6 hours. And I thought I had cheated death, And so I went to the closing in 2 days, and I started to get really foggy. And within 3 days, I was flat on my back. It turns out I had been knocked out on impact, and she spun the car around. And so my brain was completely damaged. And when I called back, I lived in a very tiny town. And when I called back to get the accident report 3 days later just to see what had happened, because I still didn't know. 3 days later, I didn't know if I caused it. I didn't know what had happened. And it turned out the state trooper was on vacation for a week, and there were no computer reports because something had happened with the computer. They had witnesses, but they couldn't tell me anything. So I had to wait a week, and then when I spoke to the state trooper, she said, this was amazing. She said, your car had been compromised when she hit you, and she'd spun you around and dragged you over to a light pole that if you had hit it, you would have been killed on impact because your car had been compromised. And witnesses had their heart in their mouth because they watched this. They watched me get hit, they watched me spun around, and they watched her drag me over to a light pole. And she said, do you have any recollection of that? Because literally you turned away from the pole in seconds before you hit. And she said, when I measured it, you were 3 inches from the pole. You landed 3 inches from the pole.
I have goosebumps. That's just so amazing.
So yes, and so I feel very blessed. And I said, yes, I have quite a recollection of it. And then what happened was that my condition worsened. And I've actually, excuse me, I'm at the tail end 12 months later of coming out of a situation where I was left with severe brain damage. And I couldn't do anything for 4 weeks but sleep. And during that time, I was approved for an apartment in New York. And while I was still waiting, I just totally surrendered. I couldn't barely walk down a hall by myself. I couldn't read newspapers. I had no car at that point. I had no home. And instead of going on the road, I had to stay in the area to see doctors. And I had to rely on everybody who loved me to help me, which anybody who does know me knows is a very different world than the woman who's been on her own since she was 16 and raised 2 boys and written books. And so I'm very self-reliant. So that total surrender was what was called for, and it was an amazing gift. It's been a hugely, I call it an event, and it's been an amazingly, hugely wonderful experience. Absolutely incredible experience in the last 12 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the path was opened up for me to teach.
Yeah, so I want you to tell more about that. But you literally had to sleep for how long were you like?
For 4 weeks, I literally couldn't carry on a conversation. I couldn't read a newspaper. I was so fatigued. What I learned, Janet, is that when your brain is damaged, your entire system goes down. So that it wasn't just that I couldn't think or converse. My whole system was so traumatized, and the brain was so injured that it wasn't sending messages. And physically, you know, we have a physical body, an energetic body, so there was so much going on with my energetics and spiritually, but just physically alone, I was so fatigued that I wasn't able to do very much of anything but be up 1 or 2 hours a day, and the rest of the time I had to be in sleep and meditation.
Wow.
And then after the first 4 weeks, September, October, and November, I wasn't able to go on trains or buses. I couldn't walk in streets where there were people. I couldn't go to restaurants. Energetically, I couldn't handle it. Light, sound, very sensory overload. My whole systems were completely overworked. And then also, I was not able to focus and concentrate for more than 2 hours a day until about December. So that was when I started to really, I was able to do some things, but with a great deal of rest. And I was able to concentrate fully for about 4 hours around December and January. March, I started to have my first 6 to 8 hour day. And as of now, I can focus and work for that length of time, but I need to take a 1 hour meditation and rest in between 3 hours of focus. So that's kind of where I'm at this point. Yeah. And that's just the physicality, you know, the spiritual aspect has been just amazing.
So tell us more about the spiritual aspect, because you said that this has really been not the way that you probably would have planned it to get to being a teacher, but it has really led you to be able to, it's like the answer to your prayer.
It was, and I was told very early on that this was what Spirit called. I've been what's called a 24/7 channel. I resonate at a frequency that's quite high from all the work that I've done and opened up to. And so I was told very early on that there was absolutely nothing to worry about, that this was created for me so that spirit could reconstruct my energy field. And they were very clear on the fact, which I love. They said, we did not create a situation where there were any broken bones or cuts in your system, because that would have created distraction. And there was no need for distraction. What we did was to give you an opportunity to rest so that you could integrate everything that we're doing, everything that we're shifting. And I have to tell you, from the moment this happened, anyone who knows me, who was around me, will tell you, I had no fear. I had complete certainty. I was in a state of 24-hour curiosity about what was happening. I wouldn't say that I was overjoyed and was partying down about this. I was very reflective. It was all I could do. Here's a wonderful, I just remember so clearly that in the world of spirit, one of our great practices is to experience the moment as it happens. Well, when you are in a situation where you are in total surrender and you must open up and ask for help, and all you can do is put one foot in front of the other in the moment, because that's all you're capable of, there's nothing else like learning how to be in the moment. And I was so in the moment because that was all I was capable of doing. And I kept thinking, how brilliant is this? Mm-hmm. I am being given this experience without, we try with our mind to be in the moment, and our mind gets in the way. I had no mind to get in the way. I had like a pass, a free pass to go right there. So that was really brilliant. And it was also amazing because of my financial situation, which we don't need to go into. There's not enough time, but different things had happened that had not left me in the position I thought I was going to be in when I left my house. So while moving to being a teacher, part of it was financial, another piece was time. So suddenly, this girl who was working 12 hours a day couldn't even stay awake. So I was pulled completely out of my life. All of my responsibilities gone. And I simply had my son write a letter to my clients to tell them what was happening, because I couldn't even put a thought together to type. I let alone get my fingers there. So everything was put on hold, and nobody knew until when. And everything was taken away. There were no responsibilities. I had none. And then I was given an opportunity financially to sell a product I had created for my business to my biggest competitor. And so he bought a license, which meant that he paid a great deal of money for a product I created, and I had to do nothing. And so suddenly I was given this financial path that came about days, or weeks actually, after this happened. And so suddenly all the time issue was gone, and suddenly the money issue was gone. But let's remember, I had no brain that was working. And so all I could do was rest. And I thought, oh, isn't this interesting? This is either totally ironic, but no, I know more. This is exactly the path, and my job is to just surrender. And as I heal, I will be shown and given what I am to do. And every step of the way, life has unfolded. And now I'm in a place where I'm 95% healed. My new website is up for spiritual teaching. I'm consulting, I'm teaching, I'm living in New York, and Spirit continues to show me what my next step is as I keep my whole being completely open and receptive. That's the last 12 months.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. And, having met you and had conversations with you, it's not, I can see where people might say, oh, yeah, well, maybe she still has a little brain damage, but no. I mean, it's like you're a normal functioning human being now, and the thing that comes across to me is how complete this transformation has been for you, and how the serenity that you have about it is just palpable. It's amazing, powerful, very powerful to be around.
Thank you, and I need to speak to that because that's the change they said they were making. I have always, as I've done more work throughout the years, I've lost edginess. I've lost parts of my humanity that I felt I needed to work on to, you know, polish the edges, but I never completely lost it. And while I had great trust and certainty, I never had complete certainty until this event. And I have complete certainty. I would never I never felt comfortable saying I had complete certainty before because I knew I didn't have it. It wasn't true. Now I have complete certainty. And the rewiring that they talked about, that happened because of the work that I had done had reached a certain level, it's my understanding, that this type of an event, my physicality was able to hold. You know, our physical form is very dense, and there's only a certain amount of energetic vibration that a physicality can hold at any time. And so my physicality, my vibration really had risen to a place where they could come in and do a lot in a very short period of time. And so that's what happened. This event was created to really speed dial my process, and also brilliantly, as only they know how to do, which I don't, pull me out of my life. What else would have I kept saying, I have no idea. How do I go? And there was no other way but to completely take me out of my life.
So I have a question here. So you keep referring to they. Who's that?
Spirit, the oneness. There are many different phrases that people use to define that which can't be defined. And that would be the energy that has created us, whether we call it God or Yahweh. I like to refer to the consciousness as the oneness. This emblem I wear, I was given when I was 16 years old by my first teacher. And for me, the oneness is the hierarchies, the energy that created us all, and is the higher good that we all are, that we carry within us. It's a separate energy field, but it's a separate energy field that is in each and every one of us because we were birthed from this energy field. Excellent. And that's the energy that speaks through me, and that I am deeply connected to 24/7.
Excellent. Yeah. So in my definition of a superb woman, I always like to say that a superb woman is someone who's very comfortable in their own skin, who knows themselves, and is using those gifts and talents, and has released some shoulds in their life. They're trying to live, or they are on the path to living a should-free life. So you obviously have gone through an awful lot, and you seem very comfortable in your own skin now. So what about the shoulds? Are there shoulds that you have released along the way?
It's not a word in my vocabulary. It's just not. It's not. It's there's nothing to share there because there's no should. Should is not a word that exists for me. Is a word that exists.
Did it used to exist for you?
Not even before this, it didn't. I think I had moved to a point many years ago where I had reached an understanding and a level of awareness where that was an illusion. Should is an illusion. Perfect is an illusion. You know, just by the nature of the word perfect, it really needs an opinion to define it. You know, what is perfect? Well, perfect looks like this. Perfect should looks like this. Should, I mean, anything that has an opinion that is needed in order for it to exist is an illusion because there are so many different opinions. So should and perfect, they just don't exist in my vocabulary.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love that definition of it. So who, or maybe there are several people, but who along your path has really been influential for you in getting you to this place, to this understanding?
Yeah. I have a teacher I have worked with for, I'm going to say, over 15, almost 20 years, and her name is Janice Hope Gorman. She is a teacher, and she has her own spiritual center called the Hope Interfaith Center. If you Google the Hope Interfaith Center, and she has a radio show called Pure Hope. She's an amazing woman. She lives south of the cities in Minneapolis in farm country, and she is a brilliant woman who's been my teacher for many, many years. Yeah. It's been the biggest.
And now you are a teacher to people. So tell us more about what is the work that you do. What is this practical spirituality all about?
Well, interestingly enough, over 12 years ago, sitting with Janice in her little office, I was visited, and Spirit channeled through me for the first time. And they told me I was to teach people how to make their life their practice. They said that people are coming into their consciousness more and more and would be, but that most people in form, humanity is one of the most recent, if not the recent evolution that we've been in, and they said that people, when they come into spirituality or turn to spirituality, they go to yoga, or they meditate, or they'll go to a weekend workshop, or they'll pick up books to read. But rarely are they moving their values into their life. And my job was to help people, which is why I work with what's called practical spirituality. And my job is to help people to look at every situation in their life that's challenging, from relationships to events to experiences, and teach them how to respond to each from one of the many faces of love, which looks like patience, tolerance, compassion, understanding. And the idea is that most people say, oh, well, yeah, I know. Everybody knows that. We're supposed to do that. But most people don't do it. They don't know how to bring a consciousness to each situation, and then how to go through the steps to make themselves aware in a situation of how they can turn their emotional charge or their negative thoughts or their anxiety into a response, a loving response that involves, using a face of love for themselves and for the other person. So I teach people how to actually walk 24/7 in the face of love, because that's our natural inheritance. That's what we're here to do. But we forget, because we're wrapped up in our mind, or we're wrapped up in our fear, and we don't realize that we actually can shift the paradigm. So I work with people, helping them to have an intuitive life that the brain and the emotions support, rather than having their brain and their emotions carry them away into places that don't serve.
Excellent. So is this one-on-one work? Do you work in groups? How is it that you actually work?
All of it. I work one-on-one. I have very inexpensive and wonderful Tuesday night teachings called Insights with Selina, and my website is selinamaitreya.com. And then people, if they're interested in checking out the Tuesday nights, they can look at Insights with Selina. It's whether you're online with us or not, you get the recording. I'm going to be live in New York, where I live, at the Namaste bookstore on Healing Center on July 17th. So they can go to namastebooks.com. And I'll be doing an evening of grace there. So there's lots of different ways to access the information and the relationship with me.
Excellent. So what's next? So you're going to be at the bookstore. You're going to be doing those healings. Is there anything else that's on the horizon for you?
I'm currently writing a book, and the book is being downloaded. When I was not able to do anything for months but sleep and meditate, Spirit was constantly downloading truths through me. And that's what became the blogs that are on my website. There's a different blog post every week that's a spirit-directed information about how to make your life your practice. And then that's turned into a teaching, and those will be a book.
Excellent.
It's all spirit-directed information about how we can live the inheritance that we are, which is love.
Excellent. And do you think that there's any significance to you being in New York City while you're doing all of this work?
I don't know. It's so interesting, because I'm sitting right now a few miles from where I used to live. I'm visiting friends. I lived in the country for 20 years. I was told to, leave the house and move on. And New York City was the place that I was directed to go. I'm sure there is. I'm building a community there now, people like yourself. It was wonderful to meet you, and such a pleasure to be here. I've actually met a man who I knew, who I'm now in a relationship with, which was another wish of mine. So I'm sure there's many reasons I'm supposed to be there. And I think, I'll end up back in the country at some point. But for now, that's where I'm supposed to be. I go where I'm guided. I stay open to guidance, and I follow. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Selina, I'm so glad that you were here today and were able to share your story and your wonderful, positive, loving energy. It comes through wonderfully in person, but I think just as much those of you who are watching can see it as well.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure, and I love what you're doing with Superbwoman. So keep it up, Jana, because we need lots of light like you. It's just tremendous, and I'm so happy to be a part of that today. I really am very honored. Thank you.
Thanks, Selina. And thank all of you who tuned in today, and for all of you who have been on our journey for these last couple of months. This is the last Superbwoman Sunday at 7 for a while. I'm taking a little time off to enjoy the summer and to visit family and friends and kind of get back to living my priorities in the way that I feel I need to do that. But never fear, we'll be back again in September, and I've already lined up. You will not believe the women that I've lined up. You thought these were great women. I've got more of the same. There are so many superb women out there, and I'm so grateful to be meeting them on my path, and so grateful to be able to share them with you. So stay tuned. In September, we'll be back with more Superb Woman Sundays at 7. And in the meantime, stay tuned for more information about how you can help support the Superb Woman and help get the message about women stepping into their own power for the betterment of all. I'll be sending out information on that shortly. So have a wonderful summer, and I'll see you in September.